The next set of questions were brought to us through Facebook, email, and they were sort of public questions we received. The deadline for them was noon today, so we've got a series of questions that have come from the public. The candidates will be given 1 minute to answer the questions. And I guess I should tell them the order. So in order, it will be Scott, Mabel, Gwen, and Jenny. And the first question from the public is, please explain how you will advocate for federal action on the missing and murdered Aboriginal women, and what are your views on a national commission on this issue? Scott.
I think a national commission is not far enough, and we need a full-on investigation into what the hell is going on, because it's completely unacceptable that this is happening in Canada in 2015. As an MP, I'll be looking to reach out to First Nations, to all communities, to rally around this issue, because again, it is thoroughly unacceptable that anyone is going missing, let alone so many in terms of our First Nations. And the fact that our current federal government is so focused on the issue of terrorism, when the reality is exponentially there are so many more missing and murdered women in our First Nations communities than anyone who's killed anybody through a terrorist act in this country. So we need to be addressing this issue today and not wasting any more time.
Mabel.
Yes, and I think all the candidates and everyone here agrees that we desperately need a national inquiry into the missing and murdered Indigenous women. When I first joined the marches in the early 90s, and I know many of you are here, the original organizers, when I was an organizer in the downtown east side, there were just a handful of the family members who would walk along the streets of the downtown east side to mark where they're missing, where their loved ones had gone missing. And this was before Robert Pickton was caught. And this is the story of a social movement and people standing for their rights and demanding justice. And we've seen it now grow from the downtown east side across Canada and around the world to be recognized. So we need not only an inquiry, we need a recognition of the genocidal policies of the Canadian government against our Indigenous people, and we need justice. We need social justice, comprehensive justice, the settlement of land claims, and the respectful treatment of our First Nations people. So nothing short of that.
Absolutely. This inquiry is long past due. The fact that the march is continuing to happen and getting bigger and nothing has still been done. An inquiry is absolutely what needs to be done. And an inquiry is a really good means of highlighting all of the many underlying situations, conditions, deplorable conditions that lead to the missing women. There is so much going on that has not changed, where the vulnerability of women, Aboriginal women especially, is not being addressed. So yes, an inquiry, absolutely. But at the same time as an inquiry, let's look at all the other contributing factors to the lives of these women. Thank you.
And Jenny?
25 years ago, I was there for the first February 14th Memorial March, and the community knew that there was something awry, that something was not quite right, and no action was taken. 25 years later, in this Memorial March, in this last one, I believe there were more than 10,000 people that was there in recognition of this travesty. And you know, we have a situation where the government simply refuses to acknowledge the effects of colonialism, the effects of the Indian Act, the effects of residential school. So we say no more stolen sisters, and we need to bring that voice over to Ottawa, and we need to get that commission going. More than that, I want the family members' voices heard loud and clear, not only here, but across the entire world. And I'm so proud that family members like Lorelei Williams is actually speaking at the UN Status of Women conference coming up in New York. That's what we got to do, not just bring us here in Denny's to fight this fight, but bring the world with us to fight this fight.
Thank you. The order for the next question is Mabel, Gwen, Jenny, Scott. The question is, why is taking a position on Kinder Morgan's pipeline expansion either good or bad for Vancouver East? Mabel.
Okay, is that a trick question? Yeah, bad news. The twinning of the Kinder Morgan pipeline. It's too risky. BC is exposed to huge environmental risks running across our province. There's not been adequate consultation with our First Nations, and we do not get the economic benefits. Now, all the benefits will flow to the oil sands in Alberta, and on top of that, if we've taken a position, the BC NDP and myself are opposed to Enbridge Pipeline. My opposition to Kinder Morgan and my case that I make to you is that Kinder Morgan is an even worse scenario than Enbridge because it cuts through many suburban areas. This is a question not only of protecting our environment, protecting our coast from oil tanker spills, but it's the future of our economy and a vision of our economy that is not based on fossil fuels, but is invested in renewable energy and that looks forward for a sustainable economy.
Well, I'm going to look at both Enbridge and Kinder Morgan because I think they're quite connected in terms of the impact on Vancouver East. Because as wonderful as East Vancouver is, we're not just here off in a little pocket of our own. We're actually part of the whole province. And when we start bringing oil across our northern land and down our coast, of course that has an impact on us as well as the Kinder Morgan pipeline. And as Mabel just stated so well, this is not well thought out. This is making no sense at all in a time of history when we should be looking at less transporting of crude across the country and big pipes and onto boats and so on, and spending our time and energy looking at other energy resources. It's absolutely ludicrous that there's even a consideration of this very dull, sort of heavy-handed way of transporting materials across the country. I really can't think of anything good to say about it.
Jenny.
Well, Kinder Morgan, I think we all agree here standing on this podium, is a bad decision for Vancouver. It's something that we're against. In fact, in the last provincial election, Mabel and I, we actually campaigned against it, and I will do it again in this federal election if I'm the nominated candidate. It's bad for Vancouver because because of the increased risks of tanker traffic. Harper, like Clark, though, seeks to divide us on this issue. The reality is that there's a lot wrong with this. The risk to the coast, the exporting of raw bitumen, as mentioned, but the position cannot be looked at in isolation. And we need a party. That's why we need a party who would advance climate change on using Canadian resources in Canada to ensure that we have job creation. That is not just a debate about one pipeline that would be used by our opponents to divide us, and that we need to say together we're against Enbridge, we're against Keystone, we're against Kinder Morgan. We want to advance and put us back on the national stage in terms of climate action. And finally, Aboriginal communities, First Nations people. We work in partnership with them. They're against it. We stand with them. This is their land.
And Scott.
I mean, beyond the environmental issues that have already been mentioned, beyond the societal issues, beyond the issues for our First Peoples, it doesn't make economic sense. And I'm really tired of watching the Conservative Party of Canada and the BC Liberal government tout their economic policies when the facts don't support that they're good on the economy. I mean, we need a diversified economy in this country so we can sustain ourselves when oil prices drop, because right now we're so tied to Alberta oil, and then the oil prices drop and it impacts our economy so greatly. We have to believe in diversification. We have to believe in innovation. We have to be supporting innovation in this country. We can't be muzzling ideas. We can't be muzzling our scientists. Our scientists and our education are the ways that we innovate, the ways that we create a strong economy, and the ways that we can go forward in the future so we can actually have then affordable housing and all these other policies that we'd like to impact. But right now, we're so focused on one industry in this country, and it's to the detriment of our economy and our people.
Thank you. The order for the next question will be Gwen, Jenny, Scott, Mabel. The question is, as a member of the federal NDP caucus, will you support the decriminalization of marijuana, and what steps would you take as a government or opposition member on this issue?
Yes, I would support the decriminalization of marijuana. It doesn't make sense that we have access. It's acknowledged that it's a benefit for many people. We have medical marijuana all over the place. It doesn't make any sense at all that there is still a street-level trade in marijuana. I'm convinced that it doesn't do anybody any benefit, and it is also, speaking of fiscal realities, it could be potentially quite a nice source of revenue for the province and the country. What would I do to advocate to have it become decriminalized? I would work with the caucus. I don't know if NDP has a particular position on it at this point, but certainly it is a thing that should be discussed and should be made a position for the NDP. Thanks.
Jenny.
Well, smoking marijuana should not be grounds for criminal sanctions, and we need to get it out of the criminal code. It's simple as that. The NDP has actually called for the decriminalization of marijuana since 1972. And once you decriminalize, what you really have to do is to regulate it. You got to figure out a way how to regulate it, so we need to devise a regulatory regime. And then, you know, the truth of the matter is that marijuana actually has a lot of medicinal value, and we've all acknowledged that. And Canadians are already there. We are already there, and we should just get this work done and move forward. No more fear-mongering, and let's move forward with progressive politics and policies that make sense for Canadians.
Scott.
I'm actually heading to a improv show to perform right after this at Kino Cafe, and I don't think I could walk in the door if I didn't say, yes, I was for decriminalization of marijuana in this country. And I don't think that even goes far enough. I think it should be legalized. I think it's completely asinine that we sell tobacco, we sell alcohol, and we know that marijuana is the least dangerous of drugs. We put people in jail that should not be in jail for either using or selling marijuana. It should be legalized and at the very least decriminalized.
And Mabel.
Well, I think it's high time we decriminalize. And recognize the role that marijuana plays in Vancouver East and in mainstream culture. I mean, look, we've even got the states who have passed referendums in favor of it. So it's coming, and it's going to be here and play a place. But having said that, there are three issues, and decriminalization is the first step in terms of moving forward along that path. We also have to address the safety impacts on children. That's legitimate, and through regulation, and as well address the role, and it's being highlighted, of gangs and criminal activity. So these are the issues that need to be canvassed. We have to build support from where it doesn't necessarily come from, and work to, this is coming into Canada, across North America, and I believe it will also be integrated in the mainstream around the world. Thank you.
So the order for our next question is Jenny, Scott, Mabel, then Gwen. What are you prepared to do about the national housing crisis?
The national housing crisis, we need a national housing initiative. We need to bring that back first and foremost. We got to stop Stephen Harper from actually cutting the subsidies for co-ops. We cannot let that happen. We need to work with all levels of government. No level of government can walk away from this big issue. It's everyone's responsibility when we owe it to our next generation to address this issue. We need specific initiatives to target certain communities. 1/3 of the Aboriginal community are the homeless community, and that is just not okay. And we need a Aboriginal community-led initiative to address these issues. People will say that we don't have money to address this. I say the cost of homelessness, the cost of the lack of affordable housing outweighs any government money that could be invested in this. SFU actually had a report done. Every dollar you invest in affordable housing, you actually save 7 down the road. We need to address the social determinants of health to move forward for healthy communities and a healthy country.
I agree. It's an issue for all 3 levels of government. We need all 3 levels of government to be working together on this issue. And I think it also connects to the issue of a living wage and being able to pay people a rate so that they can afford to live in the cities they live in. And I think that then needs some flexibility. I think we need a flexibility within the minimum wage. We need to be able to be working with municipalities and provinces to create a minimum wage that can then support people in the communities they live in. Because I know for a fact that living in Vancouver is not the same as living in Fort Mac, is not the same as living in Moncton, New Brunswick, is not the same as living in Sherbrooke, Quebec. And so we need policies that are flexible enough so that if you live in an area like Vancouver East, where the housing is getting insane in how much it costs to live in this riding, so that it can address that issue, but also be flexible enough to be able to support municipalities across the country.
Mabel?
Yes, we need a national affordable housing strategy, and I agree we need to defeat Harper and ensure that dollars are invested. Vancouver East also has one of the highest concentration of co-ops in BC and in the country, and that's a great strength. We need to build on that. When we look also at I think we also need to be creative and innovative and look at, there are some models that have been successfully implemented in other jurisdictions. We've got a model of working together with the municipalities, with credit unions, and with developers who will agree to a 6 or 8% return. And these are some of the models that have been successfully employed in New York to create housing in the States as well. So we need that at the national level, but there are also models that we can look at implementing that have been successful in North America, across Europe, that we can invest and build today.
Gwen?
Yes, there was a time when we had a national housing strategy in the country where there was actually a body of people in Ottawa who went around the country and looked at the need and looked at what the trends were in different areas and had a comprehensive plan about who needed housing where and how much it would cost and what it would look like. So that's gone now. There's not sort of a cohesive way across the country of looking at it. When we talk about the living wage and how much in the city of Vancouver, the cost of accommodation actually puts the living wage so high that it's almost impossible to meet it. And you combine that with the cost of childcare, those are 2 big factors that we really could do something about to make it so that we were able to pay people a living wage and be able to have them have jobs. So there's 2 ways. There's a different way of looking at the living wage. If you look at the costs that go into support what the escalating living wage is in Vancouver. Oh, sorry about the time. Thank you.
Thank you. So the order for our next question will be Scott, Mabel, Gwen, and Jenny.